Elena Moretti's hands were stained with titanium white and phthalo blue when the holographic notification materialized above her classroom desk. The shimmer of light disrupted the afternoon sun streaming through the cracked windows of Roosevelt High, casting fractured rainbows across the faces of her students. She dismissed the alert with a flick of her wrist, muscle memory from years of ignoring the digital world during teaching hours, but not before catching the sender's name. Richard, Ms. Moretti? Jessica Chen looked up from her canvas, a smear of cadmium red on her cheek. You okay? Elena forced a smile, the kind she'd perfected over 28 years of teaching teenagers who could smell bullshit from 3 classrooms away. Fine, Jess. Let's talk about your composition. You're rushing the foreground. The girl, 17, scholarship kid, talent that made Elena's chest ache, leaned closer to her work. Around them, 20 other students bent over their projects in the kind of focused silence that only happened when teenagers actually gave a damn about something. The art room at Roosevelt was a relic: water-stained ceiling tiles, ancient easels held together with duct tape, paint-splattered floors that hadn't been refinished since the previous century. Outside these walls, New Los Angeles gleamed with holographic billboards and climate-controlled sky bridges. Inside, they made do with whatever Elena could afford on her teacher's salary and her frequent trips to discount supply stores. Her personal device buzzed against her hip. Then again. And again, persistent today, she muttered. By the time the final bell released her students into the chaos of the hallway, Elena had 17 unread messages. She waited until the last teenager grabbed their bag, Marcus Lopez, taking too long to pack up because he lived in a shelter and the art room was warm and safe, before she finally opened the family thread. The messages materialized in augmented reality, projected directly onto her retina by the neural lens she'd been fitted with a decade ago. Everyone had them now. Even in underfunded school districts, the lenses were standard issue, courtesy of the Education Access Initiative that Richard had lobbied against in his private equity circles. Richard, mandatory family dinner, Sunday 6 p.m. Dad's 80th birthday celebration. Everyone must attend. Black tie. Patricia has arranged for a professional holographer to capture the event for the family archive. Vanessa, OMG yes. I'm already planning my outfit. This is going to be content. Hashtag Moretti Legacy, hashtag Family First. Brandon, will there be investors there? I need to network. My new venture is about to explode. Patricia, Elena, please confirm receipt. We need an accurate headcount for the caterers. Elena stood in the empty classroom, paint still wet under her fingernails, and felt the old familiar weight settle between her shoulder blades. The Moretti family dinner, where Richard held court in his 8,000 square foot smart home in the Platinum Hills district, where every surface gleamed with the kind of wealth that announced itself in whispers and designer silences. Where Patricia served deconstructed cuisine on plates that cost more than Elena's monthly rent. Where Vanessa documented everything for her 200,000 followers, building a brand on the aspirational lifestyle that their family name supposedly represented, and where Elena arrived in her 15-year-old Subaru, dressed in whatever clean outfit wasn't covered in paint, playing the role of the family disappointment with such consistency that no one questioned the script anymore. Her device buzzed with an incoming call. Not the family thread, a private line. Adrian Chen's face materialized in her vision, rendered so perfectly by the neural lens that she could see the silver threading through his dark hair, the slight crinkle at the corners of his eyes that deepened when he smiled. Which he was doing now. You saw the summons, he said. Not a question. Elena glanced around the empty classroom, a habit even though the call was completely private, the sound transmitted directly to her auditory cortex. How do you always know? Because every time your family demands your presence, you get this particular expression. Like you're calculating the exact distance to the nearest exit. He shifted, and she caught a glimpse of his surroundings, the clean lines of Chen Contemporary Gallery. The massive canvases on the walls that she recognized even in peripheral vision. Her own work, though no one looking at Adrian's background feed would know that. I have a proposition, Adrian, hear me out. The MoMA retrospective. 20 years of EM Solaris. 3rd floor, full exhibition, opening next spring. They've offered terms that I can't, in good conscience, advise you to refuse. Elena sank into her desk chair, the ancient wood creaking under her weight. Through the windows, she watched students flood into the parking lot, their neural lenses lighting up as they connected to feeds and streams and the thousand digital distractions that defined modern adolescence. I can't take a semester off. You know that, I know you won't. Which is why I've already arranged for the logistics team to handle everything. You paint 2 new pieces. I coordinate the rest. His voice softened, losing the professional edge. Elena, this is the retrospective. This establishes E.M. Solaris as one of the definitive abstract artists of the generation. You can't say no. She could, actually. She'd been saying no to Adrian Chen in various forms for 3 years, no to exclusive representation, no to the Venice Biennale, no to the private collectors who offered obscene amounts for commissioned pieces. And for the past 8 months, she'd been saying no to something else entirely, something that had nothing to do with art and everything to do with the way he looked at her when she was covered in paint and arguing about color theory. There's something else, Adrian continued. Your family dinner. Sunday, absolutely not, I'll be your date. The words hung in the simulated space between them. Elena felt her pulse quicken, a biological response that no amount of neural technology could override or disguise. You don't know what you're asking, she said. I'm asking to accompany you to a family dinner. I've been asking you out for months, Elena. You keep finding creative ways to refuse. This time I'm not giving you the option. His smile turned playful, that particular expression that made her forget she was 52 and sensible and had learned her lesson about mixing professional and personal relationships. Besides, I'm curious. I want to meet the family that's convinced you to hide in plain sight for 3 decades. They don't know. The words came out sharper than she intended. About the art. About any of it, I know. And the way he said it, gentle, understanding, without judgment, made something crack in her chest. I'll be at your place at 5:30. We're something that makes you feel powerful. He disconnected before she could protest. Elena sat alone in the art room as the sun tracked lower, painting the walls in shades of amber and rust. Her hands were still stained with paint. Her back ached from standing all day. Her neural lens displayed a queue of student assignments waiting for feedback. A reminder about the faculty meeting tomorrow morning, and a notification that her checking account balance was running low again. She thought about the locked room in her townhouse, the archive of a life her family knew nothing about. The exhibition catalogs. The sales records. The photographs of her work hanging in museums across 3 continents. The bank statements showing a balance that would make Richard's hedge fund look modest. She thought about Adrian's voice, warm and patient and persistent, and she thought about Sunday dinner, about walking into Richard's house with a date for the first time in a decade, about the questions that would follow and the judgments that would be passed and the careful fiction she'd maintained for so long that it had become indistinguishable from truth. Her device buzzed. Another message in the family thread. Richard, Elena, you haven't confirmed. Please respond, she typed quickly, before she could reconsider. Elena, I'll be there. +1. The response was immediate. Vanessa, OMG, Aunt Elena has a date? This is going to be amazing content. Can't wait to meet him. Brandon, does he have money? I need investors. Patricia, please provide your guest's full name for the security clearance. Elena powered down her neural lens, letting the digital world fade to black. She locked the classroom, checking twice that the supply closet was secure. They'd been broken into twice this semester, students stealing paint and canvas to sell on the gray market. In the parking lot, her Subaru looked even more pathetic next to the sleek electric vehicles that the other teachers drove. The driver's side door stuck, as always. The interior smelled like old coffee and chalk dust. She drove across New Los Angeles as the city transformed around her. From the decaying infrastructure of the Roosevelt District, through the mid-tier neighborhoods where holographic advertisements promised better lives through better purchases, and finally to the industrial sector where real estate was cheap and no one asked questions about who rented the warehouses. The studio was her secret, her sanctuary. She parked in the back, used 3 different biometric locks to gain entry, and stepped into a space that existed in complete opposition to everything her family believed about her life. Massive canvases leaned against the walls, some finished, some in progress. Industrial lighting arrays hung from the ceiling, programmable to any spectrum she needed. Paint supplies lined the shelves in obsessive organization, tubes arranged by color family, brushes sorted by size and purpose, mediums and varnishes labeled and dated. The floor was covered in splattered color, a record of every piece she'd created in this space over the past 15 years, and in the center, on the largest easel she owned, stood her current work in progress. Elena approached it slowly, the way she always did, letting her eyes adjust to the scale. 12 feet wide, 8 feet tall, the canvas dominated the space. She'd been working on it for 6 months, layers of color built up, scraped away, rebuilt. Abstract forms that suggested emotion without defining it. Movement without obvious direction. It was the most personal piece she'd ever attempted, and she had no idea if it was brilliant or self-indulgent garbage. Her device buzzed. She almost ignored it, but the priority code made her pause. Adrian again, but this time a text message rather than a call. Adrian, I've been thinking about what you said. About your family not knowing. I understand why you kept it separate. But Elena, they're going to find out eventually. The retrospective will be everywhere. Your face, your name, your work. EM Solaris won't be anonymous anymore. You need to control the narrative before someone else does. She read the message 3 times before responding. Elena, I know. That's why I'm going to tell them. Sunday night. After dinner, Adrian, do you want me there when you do? Elena, I want you there regardless. 3 dots appeared, indicating he was typing. They pulsed for a long moment before his response materialized. Adrian, I've wanted to hear you say something like that for 8 months. I'll try not to gloat. Elena, don't make me regret this. Adrian, too late. I'm already planning what to wear. Something that says, I'm sleeping with your disappointment of a sister, and she's the most extraordinary woman I've ever met. Elena felt heat rise in her face. They weren't sleeping together. They'd barely even touched beyond professional handshakes and the occasional brush of fingers when he handed her a glass of wine at gallery events. But the implication, the promise of it, the way he could make her feel desired with nothing more than carefully chosen words, that was Adrian's particular gift. Elena, we're not sleeping together. Adrian, yet. Elena, presumptuous. Adrian, optimistic. There's a difference. She set the device down and turned back to her canvas. The light was fading outside, the industrial sector settling into its nighttime rhythm of automated deliveries and security drones. She should paint. She had hours of uninterrupted time, the perfect conditions, a piece that demanded her attention. Instead, she stood there, staring at abstract forms that suddenly felt too revealing, and thought about Sunday dinner. About walking into Richard's house with Adrian at her side. About the moment when her carefully constructed fiction would finally collapse under the weight of truth. Her father would be there. Giovanni Moretti, 80 years old, a man who'd built a construction company with his bare hands and expected his children to understand the value of hard work and honest living. He'd been proud of her teaching career, proud in a way he'd never quite been proud of Richard's hedge fund success. But he'd also been quietly disappointed that she'd never remarried, never had children, never seemed to want the traditional markers of a woman's success. What would he think when he learned the truth? Elena's device buzzed again. Not Adrian this time. A notification from the school district. Notice, funding for arts programs scheduled for review. Roosevelt High School Art Department flagged for potential budget reallocation. Teacher positions under evaluation. She read the notice twice, her chest tightening. They'd been threatening cuts for years, but this felt different. More official. More final. Her phone, the old-fashioned audio-only phone she kept for emergencies, rang in her bag. She almost didn't answer, but the caller ID showed a number she recognized. Her financial advisor, Ms. Moretti, I wanted to reach you before Monday. The voice was professional, efficient. The quarterly distributions from your trust are ready for allocation. You have approximately $47 million in accessible funds after this period's art sales. Where would you like the money directed? Elena leaned against the wall, suddenly tired. 47 million. More money than Richard made in a year. More money than her entire family's combined net worth. Money that existed in a parallel universe to her daily life of budget cuts and supply shortages and students who couldn't afford basic art materials. The usual allocations, she said. Scholarship fund, teacher supply grants, community art programs. And. She paused, an idea forming. I want to establish an endowment. 12 million. For arts education in the Roosevelt District. Permanent funding that can't be touched by budget reviews, silence on the other end. Then, that's a substantial commitment, Ms. Moretti. Are you certain? Completely certain? I want it announced this week. The foundation signing can happen Sunday afternoon, that's very short notice, I'll make it work. Send me the paperwork. She hung up before the advisor could ask more questions. 12 million. The number was absurd, excessive, exactly the kind of grand gesture that her family would never believe she was capable of making. But it would save the art program. Would save Jessica Chen's scholarship and Marcus Lopez's safe space and the dozens of other students who needed this one place where they could create something beautiful in a world that constantly told them they weren't worth the investment. And it would be public. The foundation signing would generate press coverage. Her name would be attached to the donation. The carefully maintained separation between Elena Moretti the teacher and E.M. Solaris the artist would begin to blur. Sunday dinner would become much more interesting. Elena spent 3 hours painting that night, losing herself in the physical act of creation. Her body knew the movements, the sweep of the brush, the pressure needed for different effects, the way to layer color so it suggested depth without becoming muddy. Her mind went quiet, that rare state of flow where nothing existed except the canvas and the paint and the dialogue between intention and accident. By the time she stepped back, exhausted, the piece had transformed. What had been tentative that morning now felt bold, almost aggressive. She'd pushed the colors darker, the forms more angular. It looked like something breaking apart or coming together, she couldn't tell which, and that uncertainty felt right. Her device showed the time, 11:47 p.m. She had school in the morning. Should sleep. Should eat something. Should respond to the 17 emails waiting in her queue. Instead, she stood in her studio and imagined Sunday dinner. Imagined Adrian beside her, his hand on her back in that possessive way he had in her fantasies. Imagined her family's faces when they learned the truth. Imagined her father's reaction, pride or confusion or anger or some complicated mixture of all three, and she imagined the moment after, when all the pretending would be over and she could finally stop living two separate lives. The drive home took 20 minutes through empty streets. Her townhouse was dark, the neighborhood quiet except for the ambient hum of climate control systems and the distant wail of sirens. Inside, she went through her evening routine on autopilot, shower, attempting to scrub paint from under her nails, failing, giving up. The water ran blue and white down the drain. In her bedroom, she stood in front of the mirror and tried to see herself the way Adrian saw her. Salt and pepper hair that she'd stopped coloring 5 years ago because the maintenance was exhausting and she didn't care. Lines around her eyes and mouth, earned from decades of smiling at students and squinting at canvases. A body that was soft where it used to be firm, that showed its age in ways that fashion magazines suggested she should be ashamed of. She looked like a 52-year-old high school teacher who couldn't afford good skincare and didn't have time for the gym. She looked exactly like herself. Her device chimed one last time before she powered it down for the night. A final message from Adrian. Adrian, for the record, I'm not taking you to your family dinner because I want to meet them. I'm going because I refuse to let you face them alone anymore. Whatever happens Sunday, we face it together. That's what partners do. Sleep well, Elena. I'll see you in a few days. Elena read the message 3 times before setting the device on her nightstand. Partners. Not colleagues. Not friends. Partners. She fell asleep thinking about paint and family dinners and the particular way Adrian said her name, not like it was precious, but like it was inevitable. Like he'd been saying it his whole life and was only just now letting her hear. Saturday morning arrived with her alarm at 6 a.m. and a reminder that she'd agreed to judge the district-wide student art competition. Elena dressed in her teaching uniform, dark jeans, comfortable shoes, a cardigan that had paint stains she'd long since stopped trying to remove, and drove to the convention center where the competition was being held. 300 students. Pieces ranging from technically proficient to wildly experimental. Judges from various local galleries and art organizations, most of whom she recognized from her secret life as E.M. Solaris but who had no idea that the frumpy teacher with paint-stained hands was the artist whose work they'd purchased. The irony was not lost on her. Adrian was there. Of course he was. Chin Contemporary sponsored several of the competition categories. He stood near the contemporary abstract section, examining a student's work with the same serious attention he gave million-dollar pieces in his gallery. When he looked up and saw her, his entire expression transformed. He crossed the space between them, navigating through crowds of nervous students and proud parents. When he reached her, he didn't touch her. They were in public, technically still professional, but his body angled toward hers in a way that suggested intimacy. "You're judging?" he asked. "Every year. Why am I not surprised?" He gestured toward the exhibition. "See anyone with promise?" Elena scanned the rows of student work. "At least a dozen. Maybe more. They just need someone to believe in them, like you." She met his eyes. "Like me." They stood there, surrounded by chaos and creativity and the electric energy of young artists hoping to be seen. Adrian's hand brushed against hers, accidental or intentional, she couldn't tell. The contact lasted only a second, but it sent heat up her arm. "Tomorrow," he said quietly. "Are you ready?" "No." "Good. The things worth doing are usually the things we're not ready for." He smiled, that particular expression that made her stomach flip. "We're something powerful. And Elena, trust me." "I'm not sure I'm capable of that." "Trust me anyway." He walked away before she could respond, returning to his judging duties. Elena watched him go, noting the way other women's eyes followed him, the way he moved through the space with confidence that came from knowing exactly who he was and what he was worth. Tomorrow, she would walk into her family's world with this man at her side. Tomorrow, the carefully maintained fiction would crumble. Tomorrow, everything would change. She turned back to the student artwork and tried to focus on the present. But her mind kept drifting to Sunday dinner, to black-tie dress codes and holographic family archives, to the moment when Richard and Patricia and Vanessa and Brandon would finally see her clearly for the first time in decades. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. By the time the competition ended, Jessica Chin won first place in the painting category, her eyes bright with tears as she accepted the award. Elena had made peace with her decision. Or at least, she'd stopped second-guessing it. The endowment paperwork sat in her bag, ready for Monday morning's foundation signing. The family dinner loomed less than 24 hours away. Adrian had confirmed their timing via text. He'd pick her up at 5:30, giving them time to arrive together, to make an entrance, to signal to her family that something had shifted in Elena's carefully controlled universe. She drove home through afternoon traffic, her neural lens displaying the usual chaos of information, news feeds, social updates, advertisements for products she didn't need. Vanessa's latest post appeared in her peripheral vision, a perfectly curated image of her preparing for an important family event, the hashtags already multiplying. Elena dismissed the notification and focused on driving. At home, she stood in her closet and confronted a truth she'd been avoiding: she had nothing appropriate to wear. Her wardrobe consisted of teaching clothes, practical, washable, unflattering, and paint-stained studio clothes that were even worse. She owned exactly one dress suitable for Richard's black tie events, purchased 7 years ago and worn to every family gathering since then. It was navy blue, conservatively cut, and made her look exactly like what her family expected, the poor relation trying to dress up. She would not wear that dress tomorrow. Instead, she did something she hadn't done in years. She went shopping. The boutique was in the mid-tier district, a neighborhood Elena rarely visited. Inside, the sales associates sized her up with practiced efficiency. Older woman, no visible wealth markers, probably limited budget. They were polite but not enthusiastic. until she requested to see their formal collection and casually mentioned that price was not a concern. The energy shifted immediately. 2 hours later, Elena left with a dress that cost more than her monthly rent. Emerald green, elegantly cut, with a neckline that suggested confidence without demanding attention. Shoes that added 3 inches to her height. A small clutch that could hold her essentials. When she'd looked at herself in the boutique mirror, she'd barely recognized the woman staring back. This version of Elena Moretti didn't apologize for taking up space. Back home, she hung the dress carefully in her closet and tried not to think about Adrian's reaction. Tried not to imagine his hands on the fabric, his voice warm in her ear as they navigated her family's judgment. Her device chimed. A message from her father: Giovanni, Elena, Bella. Your brother says you're bringing someone tomorrow. I'm happy for this. It's been too long since you had someone. She smiled at the screen, her chest tight with affection for this man who'd never understood her choices but loved her anyway. Elena, his name is Adrian. You'll like him, Papa, Giovanni, if he makes you happy. I love him already. The simplicity of it, the unconditional acceptance, made Elena's eyes burn. Her father had never needed her to be rich or successful or married to some corporate lawyer. He'd only ever wanted her to be happy. And she'd spent 3 decades hiding her true happiness from him because she was afraid he wouldn't understand the dual life she'd created. Tomorrow, she would stop hiding. Tomorrow, Elena Moretti and E.M. Solaris would finally occupy the same space, the same life, the same truth, and Adrian Chen would be standing beside her when it happened. Sunday arrived with the kind of perfect weather that New Los Angeles's climate control system guaranteed for important events. Elena stood in her bedroom, the emerald dress hanging on the closet door like a challenge. Through her neural lens, she watched the family thread explode with activity: Vanessa posting preparation content, Patricia confirming catering details, Richard sending reminder messages about arrival times and dress codes. Her hands were clean for once. No paint under the nails, no residue of titanium white on her knuckles. She'd scrubbed them raw that morning, standing at her sink and watching the water run clear, feeling like she was washing away more than just pigment. The foundation signing was scheduled for 2 p.m. The family dinner at 6. Between those two events, Elena Moretti would cross a threshold she'd been avoiding for 3 decades. Her device chimed. Adrian, ready, Elena, define ready. Adrian, dressed, breathing, and willing to get in the car when I arrive. I'll handle the rest, she smiled despite her nerves. Adrian had that effect, making the impossible feel merely difficult, the terrifying feel manageable. The dress fit perfectly. Elena stood in front of her mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The emerald fabric caught the light, sophisticated without being flashy. The cut suggested confidence, authority, a woman who knew her worth. Her hair fell in natural waves past her shoulders, silver threads catching the afternoon sun. She'd applied minimal makeup, just enough to look polished without looking like she was trying too hard. She looked like someone who belonged in Richard's world. The realization made her stomach twist. Her doorbell rang at exactly 1:30 p.m. Through her neural lens, she saw Adrian standing on her modest front porch, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly mortgage. He held a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. Elena opened the door. Adrian's eyes widened slightly, his gaze traveling from her face down to her shoes and back up again with an appreciation that felt physical. Elena. His voice had gone rough. You're trying to kill me. I thought you said to wear something powerful. I didn't realize you'd take that as a challenge to stop my heart. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The space suddenly felt smaller with both of them in it. This is for you. He handed her the box. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a bracelet, silver, delicate, with a small charm in the shape of a paintbrush. Adrian, it's not expensive, he interrupted. Well, it is, but that's not why I'm giving it to you. I had it made 3 months ago. I was waiting for the right moment. He took it from her hands and fastened it around her wrist, his fingers warm against her skin. Today feels like the right moment. Elena looked down at the bracelet, the silver catching the light. Such a small thing. Such an enormous gesture. Thank you, she managed. Thank me later. After we've survived your family and you're still speaking to me. He stepped back, creating distance that felt deliberate. The foundation signing first. Are you ready for that? That's the easy part, then let's get it over with. The district headquarters was a squat building in the Roosevelt sector, unchanged since Elena had started teaching there 28 years ago. The contrast with the sleek towers of downtown was jarring. This part of the city still bore the scars of budget cuts and neglect. Neighborhoods where holographic advertisements were sparse and infrastructure repairs ran years behind schedule. Adrian's car, a sleek electric vehicle with self-driving capabilities that he'd overridden to drive manually, looked obscene parked among the old sedans and public transport vehicles. Elena felt her stomach tighten as they approached the building. Second thoughts? Adrian asked, reading her expression with the ease of someone who'd been studying her for years. I'm making a spectacle, you're making a difference. There's a distinction. Inside, the superintendent waited with a small crowd, board members, a handful of local reporters, the foundation lawyer who'd prepared the paperwork. Superintendent Harris, a woman in her 60s who'd fought for arts funding her entire career, looked at Elena with something close to reverence. Ms. Moretti. She gripped Elena's hand. I don't have words. This endowment, it's going to change everything, that's the idea. The signing took 20 minutes. Elena's signature on document after document, establishing the Elena Moretti Foundation for Arts Education with an initial endowment of $12 million. The money would fund supplies, field trips, artist residencies, scholarships. It would ensure that students like Jessica Chen could pursue their dreams without the constant anxiety of whether the program would survive the next budget cycle. The reporters asked questions. Elena answered mechanically, her neural lens recording everything for later review. She spoke about her students, about the importance of arts education, about creating opportunities for kids who needed them most. She did not mention E.M. Solaris. That revelation would come later, in a different context, with a different audience. Adrian stood at the back of the room, watching. When their eyes met across the space, he smiled, small, private, meant only for her. By the time they finished, Elena's neural lens showed 17 messages from the family thread. She ignored them all. Outside, sitting in Adrian's car in the parking lot, Elena felt the weight of what she'd just done settle over her. $12 million. Public record. Her name attached to a donation that made her financial situation suddenly very interesting to anyone who cared to look. Your family's going to see the press release, Adrian said quietly. I know, Vanessa's probably already seen it. That girl lives on news feeds. I know, Elena. He reached over, taking her hand. Look at me, she turned. His face was serious, the playful flirtation gone. Whatever happens tonight, I'm with you. All of it. The family drama, the revelations, the aftermath. You're not doing this alone, you don't know what you're signing up for. Richard can be, I don't care what Richard can be. I care about you. His thumb traced circles on her palm. And for the record, watching you sign away $12 million like it was pocket change was possibly the most attractive thing I've ever witnessed. I'm completely ruined for other women, despite everything, Elena laughed. You're ridiculous, I'm honest. He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. Also possibly a little bit obsessed. But mostly honest. The drive to Richard's house took 40 minutes through traffic that Adrian navigated with the ease of someone who'd grown up in the city. Elena watched the neighborhoods transform outside her window, from the struggling sectors to the middle-tier districts to the exclusive enclaves where wealth announced itself in manicured lawns and private security drones. Her neural lens buzzed with an incoming message. Vanessa, Aunt Elena, did you see this article about a huge arts donation in your district? Someone gave $12 million. Can you believe that? That's like your entire career salary, lol. Anyway, see you tonight. Can't wait to meet your mystery man. Elena closed the message without responding. Beside her, Adrian glanced over. She knows someone donated $12 million. She doesn't know it was me. Not yet, she will soon. His hand found hers again on the center console. Are you ready for that? No, good. The best revelations are the ones you're not ready for. Richard's house appeared at the end of a private drive, all glass and steel and architectural statements. The smart home system had already registered their arrival. Elena could see the security scan happening in real time through her neural lens, facial recognition software identifying her and flagging Adrian as an unknown guest. The gates opened smoothly, granting them access to a circular driveway where several expensive vehicles were already parked. Impressive, Adrian said, though his tone suggested he wasn't particularly impressed. Richard likes to show people what success looks like. Richard confuses success with consumption. Adrian parked the car and turned to face her fully. Elena, before we go in, I need you to know something. Adrian, I'm falling in love with you. He said it simply, like he was commenting on the weather. I've been falling in love with you for months, probably longer if I'm honest. And tonight, your family is going to see that. They're going to see us together, see how I look at you, and they're going to know. I need you to be okay with that. Elena's chest felt tight. I don't know how to do this. Be vulnerable. Let someone see everything, then let me go first. He leaned across the console, his hand cupping her face. You're the most extraordinary person I've ever met. Not because of your art, though that's remarkable. Not because of your wealth, though that's substantial. Because you chose to spend your life teaching teenagers about color theory when you could have been jet-setting to gallery openings. Because you drive this ridiculous old car and live in that modest house and give away millions like it's nothing. Because you're real in a world that's mostly performance. He kissed her then, slow, deliberate, a promise of things to come. Elena felt herself melting into it, her hands gripping his jacket, her carefully constructed walls crumbling under the weight of want. When they broke apart, she was breathless. That's going to make walking into this dinner very difficult, she managed. Good. I want you thinking about that kiss while your family interrogates us. He grinned, that devastating expression that made her stomach flip. Come on. Let's go shock some rich people. They were 15 minutes late, deliberate on Adrian's part. Elena took a breath, smoothed her dress, and let Adrian help her out of the car. His hand settled on her lower back, possessive and grounding. The front door opened before they reached it. Patricia stood in the entrance, her expression carefully neutral as she assessed them both. Elena watched her aunt by marriage size catalog every detail, the expensive dress, the confident posture, the handsome man whose body language screamed intimacy. Elena. You're late. Patricia's gaze shifted to Adrian. And you must be the mysterious plus one, Adrian Chen. He extended his hand with easy confidence. My apologies for the delay. Elena and I were at a foundation signing that ran longer than expected. Patricia's handshake was brief, professional. Foundation signing? For arts education. Quite exciting, actually. Adrian's tone was pleasant, giving nothing away. Is this your home? It's stunning. That's a Nakamura installation in the entry, isn't it? Patricia's expression shifted slightly, surprised that he'd recognized the expensive art piece. You have a good eye, occupational hazard. I own an art gallery. They were ushered inside, into a world of marble floors and soaring ceilings and the kind of minimalist luxury that cost a fortune to achieve. Elena felt herself shrinking reflexively, the old patterns reasserting themselves. Then Adrian's hand pressed against her back, steady, reminding her that she wasn't alone. The family was gathered in the living room. Richard stood by the bar, holding a drink and talking to Giovanni, who looked uncomfortable in his formal suit. Vanessa was filming content, her neural lens recording everything while she narrated for her followers. Brandon lounged on one of the pristine white sofas with his girlfriend Amber. Both of them scrolling through their devices. Everyone looked up when Elena and Adrian entered. The silence stretched for 3 seconds, an eternity in social time. Elena watched her family's faces cycle through confusion, surprise, and poorly concealed shock. This wasn't the script. Elena didn't bring dates. Elena didn't arrive looking confident. Elena didn't show up with men who looked like Adrian Chen. Giovanni recovered first. Bella. He crossed the room, embracing her warmly. You look beautiful. So beautiful, hi, Papa. Elena hugged him back, drawing strength from his solidity. This is Adrian. Adrian stepped forward, producing a wrapped package from seemingly nowhere. Mr. Moretti. Elena's told me so much about you. I thought you might appreciate this. It's a first edition history of Italian immigrant contributions to American infrastructure. The chapter on construction unions in the 1950s is particularly fascinating. Giovanni took the book with trembling hands, his eyes bright. You didn't have to. Elena mentioned you built your company from nothing. That kind of story deserves to be honored. Adrian's smile was genuine, warm. I'd love to hear about it sometime. Elena watched her father fall completely in love with Adrian in approximately 30 seconds. Richard, meanwhile, had crossed the room, his expression carefully controlled. Richard Moretti. He extended his hand, his grip slightly too firm, a dominance play. Elena's brother, Adrian returned the handshake with equal pressure, his smile never wavering. Adrian Chen. Pleasure to meet you. What kind of gallery do you own? Contemporary art, primarily. We have spaces in Los Angeles, New York, and Hong Kong. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. Chen Contemporary, you've heard of us. Yes. That's a major gallery. Richard's tone had shifted, recalculating. You handle million-dollar pieces, sometimes more, depending on the artist. Adrian's hand found Elena's back again. But enough business talk. This is a celebration, isn't it? Your father's 80th birthday. That's a remarkable milestone. Vanessa had drifted closer, her neural lens still recording. Adrian, hi. I'm Vanessa, Elena's niece. This is so exciting. Aunt Elena never brings dates to family things, then I'm honored to be the first. Adrian's smile at Vanessa was polite but distant. He'd clearly categorized her as someone who performed rather than connected. What do you do, Adrian? Vanessa's influencer voice was in full effect, her questions designed for content rather than actual interest. I run an art gallery. Contemporary works, primarily. Oh my god, that's so cool. Are you on social? I'd love to collab. I have 200,000 followers, and my audience is super into luxury lifestyle content. I'm afraid the gallery doesn't do social media partnerships. We prefer to let the art speak for itself. It was a polite dismissal, and Elena felt a surge of gratitude. Adrian had seen through Vanessa's performance immediately, understood that every interaction was content, and shut it down without being cruel. Patricia appeared with champagne flutes on a tray. Dinner will be ready shortly. Elena, can I speak with you in the kitchen? It wasn't really a question. Elena glanced at Adrian, who gave her an encouraging nod. She followed Patricia through the house, aware of the other woman's tension in the set of her shoulders. In the kitchen, all marble countertops and professional-grade appliances, Patricia turned to face her. Who is he really? I told you. His name is Adrian Chen. I googled him while you were talking to your father. Chen Contemporary is one of the most prestigious galleries in the country. He's worth at least 50 million, probably more. Patricia's eyes were sharp, assessing. How did you meet him? Through work? Through teaching? The skepticism was obvious. Through art. Elena kept her voice level. Is there a problem? I'm just surprised. You've never. Patricia paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing. You've never shown interest in dating since your divorce. And now you show up with someone like him. It raises questions. What kind of questions? Whether he knows about your situation. Your financial circumstances. Some men are attracted to women they perceive as needing rescue. The implication was clear. Adrian must be either ignorant of Elena's poverty or enjoying some kind of savior complex. The idea that he might actually be attracted to Elena for herself was apparently inconceivable. Adrian knows exactly what my situation is, Elena said quietly. Every detail. And he's here anyway. Patricia's expression suggested she didn't believe that, but before she could respond, Richard appeared in the doorway. Dinner's ready. Elena, we should talk later. About that donation in your district, did you see the news? Elena's heart rate spiked. I saw it, $12 million. Can you imagine? Some anonymous donor working through the Elena Moretti Foundation. Richard laughed. Same name as you. Funny coincidence, hilarious. They returned to the dining room, where Patricia had arranged place settings with the precision of a military operation. Adrian had been seated next to Elena, and she was grateful. Having him close felt like having armor against whatever was coming. The meal began with Patricia's usual pageantry, deconstructed courses that looked like abstract art and tasted like expensive nothing. Conversation flowed around safe topics: Giovanni's birthday, Vanessa's latest brand partnership, Brandon's newest startup idea, something involving cryptocurrency and virtual real estate that no one fully understood. Adrian played the perfect guest, asking intelligent questions, laughing at appropriate moments, his hand occasionally finding Elena's under the table. Each casual touch sent electricity through her nervous system, reminding her of the kiss in the car, the confession of feelings that still felt too big to process. Vanessa, predictably, was filming everything. Her neural lens recorded the beautiful family gathering, panning across faces and food and the expensive artwork on the walls. When her lens settled on Elena, her commentary shifted. So we're celebrating my nano's birthday tonight, and it's just such a beautiful reminder about family and different kinds of success. Her voice had that particular Instagram tone, carefully curated emotion. Like my Aunt Elena, she's a high school art teacher, has been doing it for almost 30 years. And I think there's something really beautiful about that, you know? She chose a humble path. She was really talented when she was younger, but she chose security over risk-taking. And there's nothing wrong with that. The table went quiet. Elena felt Adrian's hand tighten on hers under the table, a warning squeeze. Aunt Elena. Vanessa continued, her lens still focused, be honest with my followers, do you ever regret it? Not pursuing art more seriously? Not taking bigger risks? You're amazing with kids, but do you ever wish you'd done something more significant? The question hung in the air. Elena felt every eye on her, felt the familiar weight of family judgment settling across her shoulders. This was the moment she'd endured for 3 decades, being pitted, being used as a cautionary tale, being dismissed as the family member who'd settled for less. She opened her mouth to respond with her usual deflection. Adrian's fork hit his plate with a soft clink that somehow commanded absolute attention. He leaned back in his chair, relaxed and confident, and smiled at Vanessa with an expression that didn't reach his eyes. I'm sorry, Vanessa, but I have to interrupt. His voice was pleasant, conversational. Elena, I know you're going to be angry with me for this, but I can't sit here and listen to this anymore. Adrian, Elena's voice was urgent, warning. He ignored her, his attention on the table. I need to address something. You all seem to be under the impression that Elena chose teaching because she couldn't succeed at art. That's... He paused, his smile sharpening. That's adorable, actually. Richard set down his wine glass. What are you talking about? The truth is, I've been trying to convince Elena to let me represent her work exclusively for 3 years. 3 years of proposals, offers, increasingly desperate negotiations. Adrian's gaze shifted to Elena, softening. You're the only woman who's ever turned me down this many times, Elena. Professionally and personally. Do you have any idea how attractive that is? He reached over, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, an unmistakably intimate gesture that made her breath catch. How expensive it's been for me, he continued, his voice warm. Elena felt heat flood her face. Adrian, please, but I finally wore you down. She agreed to let me mount a retrospective next spring. 20 years of work. The Museum of Modern Art, 3rd floor, opening in April. We're in negotiations for the Tate Modern after that. The silence was absolute. Vanessa's neural lens had stopped recording. Brandon's mouth was open. Patricia looked faint. Wait, Brandon said. What? Adrian pulled out his phone, swiping through images with casual ease. Your aunt has terrible taste in titles for her pieces. Brilliant painter, possibly the most important abstract artist of her generation, but absolutely horrible with words. He glanced at Elena with genuine affection. It's one of the many things I love about you, He held up his phone, showing the table. Elena watched her family's faces as they registered the images, massive abstract canvases. Explosions of color and form, pieces they'd seen in museums and galleries and art magazines. Her last piece went for $840,000 at auction in Singapore, Adrian continued, his tone conversational. The one before that sold for just over $1 million at Christie's. This one, he swiped to another image, is currently hanging in the Guggenheim. And this one is actually in your living room, Patricia. You bought it at auction 2 years ago. Paid $600,000 if I remember correctly. Patricia's face had gone white. That's Solaris, that's Elena Moretti. Adrian set his phone down, his hand finding Elena's. She uses a pseudonym. Has for over 20 years. Keeps her teaching life and her art career completely separate. Which, frankly, is why I'm in love with her. She values authenticity over performance, substance over status. The words hung in the air. Elena felt like she couldn't breathe. Adrian had just told her family he loved her, revealed her secret, and appended 3 decades of careful fiction in approximately 90 seconds. Richard stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. This is a joke. Elena drives a 15-year-old Subaru, because she wants to, Adrian replied calmly. Believe me, I've offered to buy her a dozen different cars. She refuses every time. His thumb traced circles on Elena's palm under the table. Your sister is possibly the most stubborn woman I've ever met, Richard. It's absolutely maddening. You're saying Aunt Elena is a millionaire? Brandon's voice had gone high. Like, actually rich, multimillionaire, technically. Though Elena insists on living like she makes $60,000 a year and giving nearly everything away to scholarships and education programs. Adrian looked at Elena with unmistakable admiration. Which is one of the many reasons I'm completely obsessed with her. Giovanni had tears in his eyes. Bella, is this true? Elena found her voice finally, though it came out shaky. Yes, Papa. I'm Solaris. I have been for 23 years. I kept it separate because, she looked around the table, at the shocked faces, the recalculating expressions. Because I knew this would happen. The second you all knew, everything would change. Why didn't you tell us? Richard's voice was rising. We're your family, because you made me feel small. The words burst out of Elena before she could stop them. Every family gathering, every dinner, every conversation, you pitted me. You used me as an example of what not to do. Vanessa made content about how I'd given up on my dreams. You all assumed I was failing because that fit your narrative better than the truth. She stood, Adrian rising with her, his hand steady on her back, and speaking of the truth, Elena pulled up the press release on her own device, projecting it onto the dining room wall where everyone could see. That $12 million donation you were laughing about earlier. Richard? That was me. The Elena Moretti Foundation. I signed the paperwork this afternoon. That's where Adrian and I were before we came here. The article filled the wall, Elena's name, the donation amount, quotes from the superintendent about the transformative impact on arts education. The family stared at it in silence. $12 million, Patricia whispered. You gave away $12 million to make sure kids like Jessica Chen can afford art school. To make sure my classroom has supplies. To make sure that when budget cuts come, and they always come, arts education survives. Elena's voice was steady now, sure. Because that's what actually matters. Not the money. Not the status. Making sure the next generation has opportunities one never had. Vanessa was crying quietly, her neural lens finally powered down. Aunt Elena. I made so much content about you. About how you're a cautionary tale. About settling and giving up and, I know. I've seen it all. You never said anything. What you think of me doesn't change what I think of myself, Vanessa. That's something you learn when you stop performing for other people and start living for yourself. The words hit harder than Elena intended. She watched Vanessa flinch, saw the truth land in her niece's carefully curated face. Richard was pacing now, his expensive shoes clicking against Patricia's marble floors. "This is insane. You've been lying to us for years. Making fools of us." "She didn't lie," Adrian said quietly, but his voice cut through Richard's agitation. "She lived her life. You made assumptions based on those lives fitting your worldview. That's not her problem, it's yours. You don't understand, I understand perfectly." Adrian's arm slid around Elena's waist, pulling her close. "You needed Elena to be the failure so you could feel successful. Her poverty made your wealth meaningful. Her struggle justified your excess. And now you're angry because the narrative you built doesn't work anymore." The truth of it sat heavy in the room. Elena watched her brother's face cycle through emotions: denial, anger, something that might have been shame. Giovanni stood slowly, his old bones creaking. He crossed to Elena, cupped her face in his weathered hands. "Bella," he said softly. "Why didn't you tell your papa?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Because I wanted you to be proud of me for teaching. Not for the money. Not for the success. For choosing work that mattered, the way you did. You built things with your hands, Papa. Real things that helped people. I wanted to do the same. I was always proud of you." Giovanni's voice cracked. "Always. The teacher who cares for children, that's worth more than all the money in the world." They stood there, father and daughter, while the rest of the family watched. Adrian's hand stayed steady on Elena's back, grounding her through the emotion. Then Richard grabbed his keys and walked out. Patricia followed after a moment's hesitation. Brandon and Amber made awkward excuses, slipping away into the night. Only Vanessa remained, sitting at the ruined dinner table, her perfect family content in ashes around her. Elena sank back into her chair, suddenly exhausted. Adrian sat beside her, his presence solid and unwavering. Giovanni lowered himself into his seat, still holding the book Adrian had given him. The birthday cake sat untouched on the side table, candles unlit. "Well," Elena said finally. "That went about as well as expected." Adrian laughed, genuinely laughed, and pulled her closer. "If you think that was a disaster, you have very high standards. I'd call it a successful revelation." Half the family just walked out, the half that needed their assumptions more than they needed the truth. His thumb traced patterns on her shoulder. The people who matter stayed. Vanessa looked up, mascara streaking her face. "I'm so sorry, Aunt Elena. I've been awful. 4 years. And I documented all of it for strangers to see." "You were building a brand," Elena said gently. "I understand that. The question is, do you still want that brand, now that you know it was built on fiction?" Vanessa stared at her phone, at the thousands of posts and stories and carefully curated lies. Then, with shaking hands, she started deleting. The birthday cake sat abandoned on the sideboard, its candles unlit, while Elena watched her niece delete years of carefully curated content. Each swipe of Vanessa's finger across her neural lens interface erased another post, another story, another perfectly filtered lie about what success looked like. The girl's hand shook, her breath coming in short gasps that suggested she was deleting more than just content. She was dismantling her entire identity. "Stop," Elena said quietly. Vanessa looked up, tears streaking mascara down her cheeks. "What? Don't delete them." "Not yet." Elena leaned forward, her elbows on Patricia's expensive dining table. "Those posts are honest about who you were. Maybe there's value in that, in showing your followers that you learned something. That you changed. That's more powerful than pretending you were always enlightened." Vanessa stared at her aunt like she'd spoken a foreign language. "You want me to keep the posts where I called you a cautionary tale? Where I used you as an example of giving up? I want you to decide what kind of person you want to be. The one who pretends she never made mistakes, or the one who owns them and grows?" Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "Authentic transformation is worth more than any aesthetic, Vanessa. Your followers might actually respect that." Adrian's hand found Elena's under the table, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. The gesture was becoming familiar, grounding. She'd spent 3 decades avoiding this kind of intimacy, the vulnerability of being truly known, truly seen. Now, sitting in the wreckage of her family's assumptions, she realized that being seen wasn't the terrifying thing she'd imagined. Being misunderstood had been far worse. Giovanni cleared his throat, drawing their attention. The old man looked exhausted, his 80 years suddenly visible in the lines of his face. Elena, Bella. I need to understand something. All these years, when your mother was sick, when you divorced Marcus, when I offered to help, you never needed money? No, Papa. I never needed money, but you let me worry. You let me think. His voice cracked. I thought you were struggling. I lost sleep thinking about my daughter, alone in that little house, working so hard for so little. The guilt hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd been so focused on maintaining her separation, on proving she could earn respect through work rather than wealth, that she'd never considered this cost. Her father had carried the weight of worry for her, completely unnecessarily, for decades. I'm sorry, she said, and meant it. I thought I was protecting something important. I didn't realize I was hurting you. Giovanni was quiet for a long moment. Then he pushed himself up from the table, crossed to Elena, and pulled her into his arms. She rose to meet him, her face pressed against his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of his aftershave and the faint smell of concrete dust that never quite left him even in retirement. You are like me, he said into her hair. Stubborn. Proud. You want to do everything yourself, prove you don't need help. Your mother was the same way. He pulled back, holding her at arm's length. But Elena, family isn't about needing. It's about choosing. You chose to keep this from us. Why? Elena glanced at Adrian, who gave her an encouraging nod. She took a breath, because the second you all knew about the money, the questions would start. Why don't you live in a bigger house? Why drive that old car? Why keep teaching when you don't have to? And I'd have to explain that I want those things. That teaching isn't what I do because I can't do better, it's what I choose because nothing else matters more. She looked around the opulent dining room, at the marble and crystal and expensive emptiness. I didn't want to become this. I didn't want my worth measured by what I own rather than what I give, but we could have celebrated your art. Vanessa said softly. We could have been proud of you, would you have? Or would you have used it as content, as proof of the Moretti legacy, as another performance piece? Elena's voice wasn't cruel, just honest. Vanessa, you made posts about me being a cautionary tale because it fit your narrative. If you'd known I was successful, I would have become a different kind of content, the inspiring aunt who proved that risk-taking pays off. Either way, I'm not a person. I'm a prop in your brand. Vanessa flinched. That's not fair, isn't it? Check your analytics. How many posts have you made about family in the last year? How many of them were genuine connection versus aesthetic content? The girl's face crumpled. She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Adrian stood, his chair scraping softly against the floor. This has been fascinating, but I think Elena's had enough family therapy for one evening. His hand settled on her shoulder, warm and possessive. Mr. Moretti, it was an honor to meet you. I hope we can do this again under less dramatic circumstances. Giovanni smiled, some of the tension leaving his face. You're good for her. I can see that. Come to my house next Sunday. I'll make proper Italian food, and we'll talk like normal people. I'd like that. Elena stood, her legs shaky with exhaustion and adrenaline crash. The emerald dress that had made her feel powerful hours ago now felt like armor she was ready to shed. She wanted her paint-stained jeans and the quiet of her studio and Adrian's arms around her without the weight of family drama pressing down. Papa, I love you, she said. I'm sorry I worried you. That was never my intention, I know, Bella. Go home. Rest. We'll talk more later. Vanessa caught Elena's hand as she moved toward the door. Aunt Elena, can I come see your studio? The real one, where you paint? I want to understand. Not for content. Just, for me. Elena studied her niece's face, looking for the performance, the angle. She found only genuine curiosity and something that might have been the first stirrings of actual self-awareness. Call me next week. We'll figure it out. The drive back to Elena's townhouse was quiet. Adrian navigated the streets with one hand, the other resting on Elena's thigh in a casual intimacy that felt both new and inevitable. She stared out the window, watching New Los Angeles blur past, the gleaming towers of wealth, the struggling sectors, the massive holographic advertisements promising better lives through better purchases. You're thinking too loud, Adrian said. I just blew up my family, your family blew themselves up. You just stopped protecting them from the explosion. He glanced over, his expression soft in the dashboard lights. How do you feel? Elena considered the question honestly. Lighter. Terrified. Like I just jumped off a cliff and I'm not sure if I'm flying or falling. Want my opinion? Always, you're flying. You've been flying for decades, you just convinced yourself you were still on the ground. His hand squeezed her thigh gently. Elena, what you did tonight. That took more courage than most people manage in a lifetime. You chose truth over comfort. That's extraordinary. They pulled into her modest neighborhood, the house is small and worn compared to Richard's mansion. Adrian parked in her driveway behind the ancient Subaru, and for a moment they just sat there in the silence. Come inside, Elena said. It wasn't a question, Adrian turned to look at her fully. Elena, I'm not asking for, I just don't want to be alone right now. Please, I'll stay as long as you want me to. Inside her townhouse, Elena kicked off the expensive shoes and immediately felt more like herself. She poured 2 glasses of wine from the cheap bottle in her fridge, not the vintage stuff Adrian was probably used to, and handed him one. To surviving family dinners, she said, to surviving with your integrity intact. He clinked his glass against hers. That's the harder part. They settled on her worn couch, the kind of comfortable furniture that came from years of use rather than designer showrooms. Adrian looked absurdly elegant in her modest living room. His tailored suit against her faded cushions, but he seemed completely at ease. That was one of the things she loved about him, he moved through her world and his own with equal confidence, never judging, never comparing. She loved about him. The realization hit her with startling clarity. She was in love with Adrian Chen. You're staring, he said, smiling into his wine glass. You told my family you were falling in love with me. I did, in front of everyone. While revealing my secrets and appending 30 years of careful fiction, I'm efficient that way. Why waste time with multiple revelations when one dramatic dinner can cover everything? He set down his glass and turned to face her fully. Are you angry? I should be. You made a unilateral decision to expose everything, but are you angry? Elena set her own glass down. No. I'm terrified and grateful and completely overwhelmed, but I'm not angry. She met his eyes. You said you were falling in love with me. Past tense. Are you still falling, or have you landed? Adrian's smile turned devastating. I landed months ago, Elena. I've just been waiting for you to catch up. She kissed him then, not tentative like before, but deliberate, claiming. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and for the first time in years Elena let herself surrender to want without calculation or protection. His mouth was warm, tasting of wine and promise. His hands traced patterns on her back through the emerald fabric, and she felt herself melting into him, into the possibility of being fully known and still desired. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I should probably go, he said, though he made no move to leave. You should probably stay. Elena's voice was rough. In the guest room. Or on the couch. Or in your bed, if you're actually asking. His thumb traced her jawline. But Elena, I need you to be sure. Not because of tonight's drama or adrenaline or reaction to family chaos. I need you to want this, want me, for the right reasons. She pulled back enough to look at him clearly. The right reasons? Adrian, I've wanted you for months. I've been fighting it because I was terrified of what it meant to let someone see all of me. The teacher and the artist and the millionaire and the woman who still drives a car with a broken radio because it works, and why waste money on vanity? She laughed, slightly hysterical. You've seen everything now. You stood in my brother's house and defended me and told him my car was a choice rather than a limitation. You know exactly who I am, and you're still here. If those aren't the right reasons, I don't know what would be. Adrian kissed her again, slower this time, thorough. When he spoke, his lips still brushing hers, his voice was low. Show me the rest of your house. She led him through the small townhouse, the cramped kitchen, the bathroom with outdated fixtures, the guest room that served as storage for teaching supplies. And finally, the locked door. This is my secret, she said, opening it. Inside, the carefully organized archive of her other life. Exhibition catalogs, awards, photographs of her work in museums across 3 continents. The wall of achievements that no one else had ever seen. Adrian stepped inside, his eyes moving over everything with the practiced assessment of someone who understood art and success and the weight of both. He picked up a catalog from the Guggenheim retrospective. Flipped through images of her work, set it down carefully. You keep it locked, he observed. I didn't want students finding it. Or neighbors. Or yourself? He turned to face her. Elena, this room is a shrine to accomplishments you refuse to acknowledge. You've spent 3 decades hiding your light under a bushel basket, and even in your own home, you keep it locked away. The observation stung because it was accurate. She'd told herself she was protecting her privacy, maintaining separation, staying humble. But maybe she'd just been afraid of her own success, afraid of what it meant to want more than one thing, afraid of being seen as anything other than the modest teacher. I don't know how to be both, she admitted. Elena the teacher and Solaris the artist. They feel like different people, they're not. They're both you. Adrian crossed to her, taking her hands. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can stop hiding. The MoMA retrospective, Elena, that's going to expose everything. Your name, your face, interviews about your process. Solaris won't be anonymous anymore. You'll have to integrate these identities whether you're ready or not. The thought made her chest tight. What if my students treat me differently? What if they think I'm not a real teacher anymore, just some rich artist slumming it in public education? Then you teach them the same lesson you tried to teach Vanessa tonight, that authenticity matters more than performance, that you can be multiple things simultaneously. That success doesn't require choosing between passion and purpose. His smile was gentle. Besides, your students already know you're exceptional. They won't care if you're also rich and famous. They'll just be proud their teacher is a badass. Elena laughed despite herself. Did you just call me a badass? I've been calling you a badass in my head for 3 years. I'm just finally saying it out loud. He pulled her closer. Now show me your bedroom, Elena Moretti. I want to see where the most stubborn, brilliant, maddening woman I've ever met actually sleeps. Her bedroom was as modest as the rest of the house, a queen bed with worn sheets, a dresser that had seen better decades. Windows that overlooked her small backyard. No art on the walls. No expensive anything. Just a place to rest between teaching and painting and the exhausting work of maintaining 2 separate lives. Adrian took it all in, then turned to her with an expression that made her breath catch. I'm not staying in the guest room, he said. Unless you want me to. But Elena, I want to stay here. With you. Tonight and as many nights as you'll let me. She kissed him by way of answer, and this time when they broke apart, she started unbuttoning his shirt. His hands found the zipper of her dress, sliding it down with careful reverence. They undressed each other slowly, no rush, no performance. When they finally fell into her worn sheets together, Elena felt something shift inside her, a wall coming down, a door opening, the possibility of being whole rather than fractured. Adrian made love to her with the same patient intensity he brought to everything else, learning her body the way he'd learned her art, with attention and curiosity and genuine care. When she came apart in his arms, she heard herself saying his name like a prayer, like a promise, like the beginning of something she'd been too afraid to want until now. Afterward, they lay tangled together, his hand tracing lazy patterns on her hip while she caught her breath against his chest. I love you, she said into the darkness. I'm in love with you. I have been for months. I just didn't know how to, I know. His arms tightened around her. I've known. I was just waiting for you to be ready to admit it, arrogant, observant. He kissed the top of her head. Also patient. Also completely and irrevocably in love with you. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and Elena slept better than she had in years. She woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom windows and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember why there was coffee. She never made it in the morning, always grabbed it on the way to school, and then the previous night came back in a rush. The dinner. The revelation. Adrian, she found him in her kitchen, wearing his dress pants and undershirt, making coffee in her ancient machine with the competence of someone who'd learned to adapt to any situation. He looked absurdly beautiful in her modest space, all elegant lines and casual confidence. "Morning," he said, handing her a mug. "Fair warning, I used your entire coffee supply. We'll need to go shopping, we. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "Unless you're planning to make me leave after one night. In which case, I should warn you that I'm an extremely persistent person when I want something, I've noticed." She sipped the coffee, strong, exactly how she liked it. "Adrian, what happens now? After last night, after everything, now you live your life." Both lives. Teacher and artist. Woman in love and woman with purpose. You stop hiding, stop fragmenting, stop pretending you have to be one thing or another. He set down his mug and cupped her face. "And I'm going to be here, being insufferably supportive and occasionally infuriating, probably offering to buy you cars you don't want." "I don't want a new car, I know. It's one of the many things I love about you." Her neural lens chimed with incoming messages. Elena hesitated, then opened them. "Vanessa, Aunt Elena, I couldn't sleep. I've been thinking about what you said. Can we talk? Really talk? Not for content. Just. I need to understand how you did it. How you lived a life that mattered without needing anyone to see it." "Giovanni, Bella, come for dinner Tuesday. Just you and Adrian. No Richard, no drama. I want to know my daughter again." Superintendent Harris, Ms. Moretti, "The foundation signing has generated tremendous press. Would you be available for interviews about your dual career and the importance of arts education? I think your story could inspire significant change." And finally, from Richard, "Richard, I don't know what to say. I need time to process this. But Elena, I'm sorry. For the comments, the assumptions, all of it. You deserved better from your brother." Elena read the messages twice. Feeling the seismic shift in her family dynamics, in her public identity, in everything she'd carefully constructed over 3 decades, "The superintendent wants interviews," she said. "About being EM Solaris and teaching. About integrating both identities. Are you going to do it?" "I think I have to. Not just for me, for my students. They need to see that you can be multiple things, that success doesn't mean abandoning the work that matters." She looked up at Adrian. "Will you help me?" "Not as my gallery owner. As my partner," he supplied. "Say it, Elena. Practice using the word, as my partner, better." He kissed her, slow and thorough. "I'll help you with everything. The interviews, the retrospective, dealing with your family, teaching your students, navigating what comes next. That's what partners do, even when I'm stubborn and maddening, especially then. Those are my favorite parts." They spent the morning planning, Adrian making calls to his gallery team, Elena drafting responses to messages, both of them mapping out the logistics of Elena's life about to become very public. By noon, they'd outlined a strategy: controlled revelations, interviews that emphasized education and authenticity, using her platform to advocate for arts funding and opportunities for underserved students. Elena's secret would become a story with purpose rather than just a revelation. That afternoon, she drove to her studio, her real studio, the warehouse space she'd kept hidden for 15 years. Adrian followed in his own car. When they arrived, she unlocked the door and led him inside. The massive canvas she'd been working on dominated the space, 12 feet of color and emotion, the most personal piece she'd ever attempted. Adrian stood before it in silence, his expression unreadable. It's not finished, Elena said nervously. I'm not sure if it's good or self-indulgent or, it's extraordinary. His voice was rough. Elena, this is the best work you've ever done. It's vulnerable and powerful and completely honest. What are you calling it? She'd been avoiding naming it, afraid that putting words to it would make it too real. But standing there with Adrian, in the space where she created, she knew, integration, she said. It's about bringing together all the fractured parts, making them whole, perfect. He turned to her, pulling her into his arms. When the retrospective opens, this needs to be the centerpiece. This is the piece that ties everything together, all 20 years of work leading to this moment of honest self-reflection. You think I can finish it in time? I know you can. And I'll be here while you do, bringing you coffee, reminding you to eat, telling you when to stop overworking passages. His smile turned wicked. Also occasionally distracting you when you get too serious. Is that your professional gallery owner opinion? That's my partner opinion. There's a difference. They spent the rest of the afternoon in the studio, Elena painting while Adrian worked on his laptop, coordinating the retrospective logistics. It felt natural, domestic, like something they'd been doing for years rather than hours. When the light began to fade, Elena stepped back from her canvas, exhausted and exhilarated. Come to dinner with me, Adrian said. Somewhere nice. Let me take you on a proper date now that I don't have to pretend I'm not desperately in love with you. I'm covered in paint, you're always covered in paint. I wouldn't know what to do with you if you were clean. He crossed to her, pulling her close despite the mess. Elena Moretti, will you let me take you to dinner? Will you let me be seen with you in public, holding your hand, making it absolutely clear that you're mine and I'm yours? Yes, she said simply. To all of it, the restaurant Adrian chose was in the Arts District, elegant but unpretentious, the kind of place where artists and collectors mingled over organic cuisine and natural wine. Elena felt conspicuous in her paint-stained jeans, but Adrian's hand on her back, possessive and proud, made it clear he didn't care. They were seated at a corner table with soft lighting and privacy. To new beginnings, Adrian said, raising his wine glass. To integration, Elena countered. To being whole, they toasted, and as Elena sipped her wine, something expensive and complex that she'd never have ordered for herself, she felt the last pieces of her carefully constructed walls crumble. This was her life now. Teacher and artist. Woman in love. Person with wealth who chose simplicity. All of it, simultaneously, without apology or explanation, her neural lens chimed. A message from Jessica Chen. Her star student, Jessica, Ms. Moretti, I just saw the news about the foundation. Thank you doesn't feel like enough, but thank you. Because of you, I can go to art school. Because of you, I can dream bigger than I thought possible. You're my hero. Elena's eyes burned with tears. She showed Adrian the message, and he squeezed her hand across the table. That, he said quietly. That's why you do it. Not the retrospectives or the auction prices or the critical acclaim. That message right there, that's success, I know. Elena wiped her eyes. God, I'm a mess. Crying in public at expensive restaurants, you're human. Also in love. Also exhausted from rebuilding your entire life in 24 hours. He smiled. It's one of your more attractive looks. They finished dinner talking about everything and nothing, the retrospective timeline, Elena's teaching schedule, Adrian's gallery commitments, where they'd spend their nights now that they'd crossed this threshold. By the time they left, Elena felt steadier, clearer, ready for whatever came next. Walking to the car, Adrian's arm around her shoulders, Elena's neural lens lit up with a notification. The interview with Superintendent Harris had been scheduled. The press release about E.M. Solaris's true identity would go out tomorrow. The retrospective planning was in full swing. Her carefully hidden life was about to become completely public. Scared? Adrian asked, reading her expression. Terrified. Good. The things worth doing usually are. He opened her car door, but before she could get in, he pulled her close, kissing her under the streetlights of New Los Angeles. Whatever happens, Elena, we face it together. that's the deal. You don't get to hide anymore, and I don't get to love you from a distance. We're all in, both of us, all in, she agreed. They drove back to her townhouse through the glittering city, and Elena realized something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't Elena Moretti the teacher or E.M. Solaris the artist anymore. She was both, simultaneously, without contradiction. The integration she'd been painting was happening in real time. In her life, in the way Adrian's hand rested on her thigh as he drove and the way she felt both terrified and exhilarated about tomorrow. At her door, Adrian hesitated. I should go home tonight. Let you rest, process everything without me in the way. Don't, Elena said immediately. Stay. I don't want to wake up alone tomorrow. Not when everything's about to change, then I'll stay. Tonight and tomorrow and as long as you'll have me. That might be a very long time, I'm counting on it. They went inside together, and as Elena locked the door behind them, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the hallway mirror. She looked exactly like herself, paint-stained, exhausted, slightly overwhelmed. But for the first time in 3 decades, she also looked whole. The woman in the mirror wasn't hiding anymore. And the man standing behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, loved every complicated, contradictory, authentic part of her. I love you, she said, watching their reflection. I know, Adrian replied, kissing her temple. And tomorrow, when the world finds out who you really are, I'm going to make sure everyone else knows it too, that I love you, that you're extraordinary. The love part is just for me. They went to bed together, and Elena fell asleep thinking about integration, about wholeness, about the morning when she'd wake up and stop hiding. For the first time in her adult life, she was looking forward to being completely, honestly, authentically seen, and she wasn't facing it alone.